Hi guys, welcome to this brief tutorial looking at Macbeth. This is not a previous AQA question, but I was wondering and speculating about whether we might get an exam at some point that focuses on characters in powerful positions. So that could be, it could be something to do with kingship or leadership, or people in sort of powerful either with status or with roles, something like that. So I've gone for a slightly generic question, just because I think it could fulfill a number of different purposes. Right, so we're looking at the way that Shakespeare presents characters in powerful positions. What I wanted to do is just kind of talk through the things that I would mention from this extract and then how I would link it to the rest of the play. So I think that this extract's interesting in that we see different characters in different and differently powerful positions. If we start by thinking about Duncan as king, he is the most important person. This is a society that believes in the divine right of kings, the great chain of being. Next to God is your king. And so Duncan has really this kind of instrumental power. You kind of get two different types of power. Instrumental power is he's kind of got the power of law and authority. And just his role, a bit, now a prime minister, I don't know, lawmakers, judges, they've got instrumental power. They've got the power to enforce things. So Duncan, just by being the king, has this instrumental power. That's kind of one of the first points I want to make. And I think it's important that we see that Macbeth actually recognises this. He says, I am his kinsman, I'm his kind of family and his subject. He recognises that in this dynamic, he is lesser than Duncan, he is a subordinate to him, and so he recognises the power that Duncan has, and he also recognises that both of these are strong reasons to not kill him. So he acknowledges that, and he then recognises that as his host he should prevent the murderer, not bear the knife himself. But that links less to the idea of powerful positions. We could, I suppose, say that as a host, it's, he should be there to protect Duncan, and that in fact is, at the time when the play's been written, it's a trusted and therefore powerful position to be in. Duncan trusts Macbeth enough to go to his castle because he believes that Macbeth, as his subject, will protect him. And then he goes on to think about Duncan himself, this character who has this power, this kingship. And think about the way he describes him here, meek. Meaning here, we tend to think about meek being weak, not standing up for yourself. It means more the idea of gentleness and fairness. And he's been clear in his great office. The great office is talking about his kingship here. And Macbeth then acknowledges that Duncan, this character in a powerful position, his king, is actually an amazing king, so much so that he has virtues or good qualities that will plead like angels. So he kind of personifies here Duncan's good qualities, saying that they will really appeal to heaven about the idea of him being murdered. And Macbeth actually fears that heaven itself really will intervene against, the horrid deed. So he, in many ways, admires, respects, even to a degree fears Duncan and his power, to the extent that he feels heaven might intervene with him. And then, we know this quote, it's a famous quote, this kind of metaphor at the end here where he says, I've got no spur, blah, blah, blah. He's got no justification really or cause to kill Duncan, his intent, which is murder, only vaulting ambition. So we see here that we've got references to Duncan's power, but also Macbeth is in a powerful position. He is the host. He is there to protect Duncan, and yet that also gives him opportunity, as we see here, opportunity for, if he's got evil desires, regicidal desires, he's got that opportunity to act upon them. So a few things we could mention here. Now, I wanted to think about how, if you've got a question about powerful characters, if you've got things about kingship or leadership or people with powerful status, what might you mention? So I've got a few examples here that I would think about you could use. Why don't you have a go at trying to sort of draw some of these together? Macbeth himself is in a powerful position because he's leading Duncan's army. In Act 1, Scene 2, when the captain reports back, we hear about his being valiant, him being brave. We hear about the fact his sword smoked with bloody execution. So we know that he was an impressive soldier and powerful enough, had a powerful enough position that he could change the course of this battle that looked like they would be outnumbered and overwhelmed, actually to be very successful. I've just put TH here, this idea of the tragic hero, him being established as a good character at the beginning. And then I want to think about Duncan. How is he represented? Well, we learn a bit about him in Act 1, Scene 2, how pleased he is with his army, with the performance of Macbeth, even awarding or rewarding Macbeth with the title Thane of Cawdor. And that's reinforced in Act 1, Scene 4, when we see him being a fair, friendly, loving king. He tells everyone that Malcolm, his son, will be the Prince of Cumberland, something that Macbeth sees as a step to either fall down over or overleap. But everything we see about Duncan is he's a good king. He's loving and grateful and humble, even though he doesn't need to be as a king. So thinking then, moving on, still in Act 1, Lady Macbeth, she doesn't technically or on paper have a powerful position, but what she does have is, and I think this is an interesting comparison, she has what we would call influential power. She doesn't necessarily have the law or the actual position to go with it, but she has persuasive power. And I think it's an interesting comparison to make, as do in actual fact the witches. So we know that shortly after this extract, in actual fact, we see her dominant, abusive, overpowering Macbeth, using her sort of emotional blackmail, mentioning things like the baby, saying that he's not a man, he doesn't love her, a number of different things. So we could definitely talk about she has a powerful position in the marriage, in their sort of marriage or relationship. And we could even be talking as well, just added it on here, about Act 1, Scene 3, the witches. We know that they've got powers, supernatural powers from Act 1, Scene 1. They can fly, they can predict. So we could definitely do some stuff on their ability to manipulate, give half-truths, sow some seeds in ripe minds like Macbeth. Okay, so then thinking about the mid-sections of the play, so really Act 3, I'm thinking two main things I'd talk about here. So this is really, we could talk about Macbeth's reign, his kind of reign as king. What does that look like? Well, it looks corrupt, and it looks unfair and abusive of power. I think, we see him Act 3, Scene 1, he's taken the kingship for himself. He already is using this kind of royal plural pronouns to describe himself as the leader of and head of Scotland. But I mean, we would be focusing on surely this idea of him in this powerful position as someone to hire murderers to kill Banquo, showing just how much he is abusing his power. He no longer does the dirty work himself, he gets other people to do that. And then in Act 3, Scene 2, seeing him, again, he's a king, and yet we learn from Lady Macbeth's dialogue that she says, "How now, my lord, why do you keep alone?" So we know that he's in this powerful position, but he's self-isolating, not in a COVID sense, but, just keeping in his rooms. She also says, "Sleek over your rugged looks." So we know that he's not really making the most of his kingship. In actual fact, he tells her, "Full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife." Now we could mention, if we wanted, Act 3, Scene 4, the hallucinations and lack of control when he sees Banquo's ghost, showing, certainly for people at the time, they would be very suspicious of that kind of behaviour. It doesn't feel kingly to them. And then looking in sort of towards the end of the play, so Acts 4 and 5, and focusing particularly on, again, this exploitation of his powerful position to kill Macduff's family. We could link that really to the Banquo scene. Moving on to other characters, actually, where we've got Malcolm and Macduff talking. We know in Act 4, 3, and Scene 3 that Macduff learns of his family have been murdered. And we see Malcolm sort of stepping up into kingship, talking about our power is ready to go against Macbeth. Now, we could talk about whether or not Malcolm is actually adopting that royal plural pronoun, or whether he's just viewing them more collectively and it's used for legitimately sort of plural purposes. But yeah, the idea that now Malcolm is in this powerful position, he's got a very emotional Macduff to deal with, and is going to sort of use that power to overthrow Macbeth. Then again, seeing Macbeth, as king, still the tyrant king, but now in a position where he's so desensitized to violence that he just abuses the few followers he has left. He has forgotten the first taste of fears. He's just entirely kind of desensitized. And then this idea at the end of the play that we've got a return to the natural order because Malcolm is reinstated as the rightful king. The natural order is returned, and they focus on all hail Malcolm, because he is now the rightful king of Scotland. Okay, so if you do get a question on something to do with powerful positions, leadership, powerful status, kingship, it might not be this extract, but I'd suggest that some of these ideas here within this plan would be really useful for you to talk about. Why don't you have a go at doing a kind of powerful or kingship style essay, drawing together some of these ideas. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Bye.